Good morning, everyone. I'm John Casper with the Oshkosh Chamber. Thanks for joining us today on our, actually, this is the first of three-part series on bite-sized learning sessions. Again, we're doing them with Step Into Humility with Angela Bergstrom. You've done about 3 or 4 of these with us already, I think, over the last several months, and backed by popular demand, we're doing this series. Today is the topic is 12 invaluable laws of growth. Live them to reach your potential. So sounds like a great topic. We are going to be recording this. People who are joining us can ask questions, and we will. So use the Q&A button on the bottom of your screen. Ask those questions, and we will go through it at that time, at the end of the session. So I think with that, I will throw it over to Angela and get the program started.
All right, thanks, John. I just had a moment of panic because my Zoom shut down and then it came back. So I guess we're never without technical issues, are we?
Yeah, well, we hear you. We can't see you, though. So I don't know if that's, there you are. Okay.
Okay.
All good.
All right, that's good. Yeah, because it shows my video. So
Perfect.
Always got to have some kind of technical difficulties. It never fails, but I always kind of plan for that, honestly. So, but thanks again, John, for having me and inviting me to present for the Chamber of Commerce. I always enjoy having these opportunities and really appreciate it. And thank you to everyone who's joining us this morning. I'm really excited to share today's content with you. So let me get my PowerPoint up and running here. And I'm just going to ask John or Mark, can one of you guys let me know if the PowerPoint is coming through okay?
We're all good here.
Yeah, that looks
all
fine.
All right, perfect. Okay. Excellent. Thank you so much. So a little bit of holiday spirit here. Just for those of you who don't know me, I know I've done a couple of these before, but there's always new people that come on. So for those of you who don't know me, like John said, my name is Angela Bergstrom. By the way, I am not related to the Bergstrom Automotive Bergstroms. We're from a different clan, apparently. But people always ask me that, so I make sure when I introduce myself to clarify that, because that seems to be a burning question on everybody's minds that don't know me. As John said, I am the owner of Step Into Humility Leadership Solutions. And this is a business, it's just my own little business. I started about a year and a half ago. My timing was absolutely impeccable because who doesn't want to start a business and have a pandemic within the first year of business? But, we're working our way through. I know it's impacted a lot of people, but we're still pushing forward. So a little bit about my business. I provide services in leadership development, consulting, coaching, training, and speaking. I primarily focus on servant leadership and how to develop the skills to be a strong, effective servant leader, but I also work with a lot of interpersonal skills like communication and diversity and all different kinds of things. I'm a certified John Maxwell team member, so I can use a lot of their content. Actually, today's content comes from John Maxwell. Also, I'm certified with things like Extended Disc, certified with Franklin Covey. So I have a variety of content that I can pull from for my clients. I also organically grow my own content and write some of my own programs. So servant leadership is something that I'm very passionate about. Actually had a pretty life-changing experience several years ago, and that just really kind of fueled my desire to develop more leaders to help others. So, that's what my mission is, to equip you to lead your best where you are. In other words, helping people who are at all levels of leadership, whether you're just getting started or whether you've been in it for a long time. That's what I focus on, and that's what I do. So all my contact information is up on the screen. Feel free to take that down if you ever want to reach out, even after today's presentation. If you have any questions, anything that you want to talk through, please feel free to reach out. Also, if you follow me on Facebook, LinkedIn, I always post things there with information or upcoming events. So please feel free to follow me. All right, so today, as John mentioned, I am going to talk to you about the 15 invaluable laws of growth. And just to give you a little background on this subject, it is based on the book by John Maxwell. So if you're not familiar with John Maxwell, I think most people are, but there's some that aren't. If you're not familiar with him, he is considered the #1 leadership expert in the world. He's a New York Times best-selling author. This guy, he's written, I think he's close to or over 100 books now in his career. He's sold over 30 million books in 50 different languages. So I think that's pretty remarkable. He's just very highly followed and highly revered. And for the first 50 years of his life, or I should say for the last 50 years of his life, he has literally trained millions of people around the world. So, it's really exciting. As a certified John Maxwell team member, I'm able to, facilitate some of his programs, and this is one of those. And I can do it in a variety of formats, by the way. It can be one-on-one individual coaching. I can do, mastermind peer groups or study groups, workshops, keynote speaking, and then the bite-sized learning format that we're going to do today. So, a variety of options to present content based on people's needs and their learning styles. Now, as we talk about the 15 laws of growth, the book actually explores tried and true growth principles and practices that will help you to do a variety of things. It helps you to develop the right attitude, especially toward personal growth, helps you to learn more about your strengths. It focuses on tapping into your passion, so important. Focuses on helping you become more in touch with your purpose. Passion and purpose kind of go together. And also just to develop your skills so that you can reach your full potential. It doesn't just happen on its own. There are things that we have to do if we want to grow into our full potential. Now, as much as I would love to cover all 15 laws of growth with you, our time together will only allow me to cover 2 of those laws. So as we near the end of 2020, the overwhelming consensus that at least I've heard from everybody, the overwhelming consensus has been that it just cannot end soon enough, right? I mean, I in fact, if I were to put up a poll, I don't have one ready for you today because I'm not the moderator, but if I were to put up a poll and ask all of you who are out there in the audience today, if you want to be done with 2020, I am certain that 100% of you would raise your hand and say, me, I am ready to be done. It's just been such a, I don't know, I don't want to use the unprecedented word, but it has just been just an incredible year, and not in a good way. It's like we have the overarching pandemic, as if that wasn't enough in and of itself, right? Then we had, it compounded by so many other things, by, the escalation of racial inequality, by the deep divisiveness over recent elections. I don't know about all of you. I have been, I think, since I turned 18, I think I have voted in 6 elections. I was trying to remember them all the other day. I think I voted in 6 elections, and I honestly don't remember an election that was as ugly as this year's election was. I mean, I know there's always been competitiveness, and you always have the mudslinging and the scandals and all that kind of stuff, but I just feel like this year has been so incredibly filled with just division and hatred and violence and so many things. And it still continues on as we work through the next couple weeks, and everyone's kind of, I think, like on pins and needles trying to figure out what are the next few weeks going to look like as we get through this transfer of power. Some of the other things, the economic decline, unemployment, all the fallout from the pandemic, the intense natural disasters we had, many of which were overshadowed by the pandemic, but there were some pretty massive natural disasters this year, a lot of hurricanes, the Australian fires, the fires that we had in the United States. I mean, it was just so many things, riots, protests, the mental health crisis. I mean, I just listed off like 8 things, and I could still go on and on and on. So when it comes down to it, most of us are just chomping at the bit to get rid of everything 2020. We just want to rid ourselves of all of it, right? And we want to get rid of it because we have this hope. I think a lot of us have the hope that 2021 will bring us back to that sense of normalcy, right? That sense of comfort, going back to the way that things were before the pandemic and everything else that occurred this year. And believe me when I say, I hear you, I see you, and I totally get it. All that being said, however, what we have to keep in mind is that the only guarantee that tomorrow or next year is going to be greater than today is that you're growing right now. The thing is, we cannot sit around and wait for everyone else to change. And that's kind of how we're programmed. We oftentimes point fingers, or we look outward. We look at, well, this person needs to do this, or the government needs to fix this, or so-and-so needs to do this. We tend to focus our energy and our attention and our effort outward, and really where it needs to be focused is inward, because real change starts with you, right? Real change starts within. And you cannot change your life until you change something that you do every day. So if you all want a better 2021, and I think that we all do, I'm pretty sure we all do, it isn't going to automatically happen when we flip that calendar on January 1st, when we flip from December to January and toss those 2020 calendars in the trash. You have to start with yourself, and you have to be willing to take action. And that's why I chose to share the 15 laws of growth with you all today. And there are 4 learning objectives that I'm going to cover with the goal of helping you to position yourself to learn from all of your experiences in 2020, both the good and the bad. Guessing for most of us, there were probably more on the bad side of the spectrum. But we're going to learn from all of those experiences and identify areas of growth that you can pursue in the year 2021, which is only about, 3 weeks away now. So what we'll do today is we're going to start with a year-end review that is designed to look back on 3 areas in your life to help you to determine where you grew this past year. I'm sure there was a lot of growth that occurred despite everything that happened. And then it's going to help you look at where you need to grow as you move forward into 2021 and how you can capitalize on both. Within that, I will also be talking about the law of pain, which says that good management of bad experiences leads to great growth. And based on how 2020 has gone, as I've been talking about for the last few minutes, I'm pretty confident that there will be a lot of opportunities to learn and grow from, a lot of experiences there. Then what we'll do is we'll take a look at how to get started and how to build out your 2021 growth plan using a 4-step process. And then finally, I'll wrap it up by touching on the law of the rubber band, which encourages us to stretch and grow out of our comfort zones. It's a place where not too many people like to hang out, being outside of the comfort zone. Now, this is important. Don't miss this. You absolutely cannot make a growth plan without first taking some time for personal reflection. And that's why we're doing a year-end review. Personal reflection is the whole basis of the year-end review that I'm going to walk you through. And there are essentially 3 areas that this year-end review focuses on to help you identify where you grew this past year and where you need to grow. So that first area is relationships. Now, this is one of the biggest growth areas for any person. Okay, we should always be striving to grow in our relationships, probably more so in our personal relationships that mean a lot to us. But in any degree of relationship that we have, we should always be striving to grow. And the thing we have to remember or understand is that complacency and comfort in relationships can be highly detrimental. So when we strive to grow in our relationships, it kind of pushes us out of that comfort zone. It makes us work a little harder. It makes us value those relationships more. The second area is responsibilities. So our year, this past year, our days, our weeks, our months are composed of things we have to do, both at work and at home. So it's really important to take a look at all of those responsibilities, almost kind of taking an inventory of your responsibilities to help you kind of identify areas where you can potentially grow, maybe taking on new responsibilities or making some shifts in your responsibilities. And then that third area is our returns, otherwise known as our outcomes. And of all the reflecting that you can do as part of this year-end review, this area, the returns and the outcomes, is going to reveal the most about how much you've grown over the past 12 months. So what I want to do next is explore each of these in explore these a little bit further, I should say. And then I'm going to give you some specific questions, some very specific questions that you can ask yourself to reflect in each of these areas. So get your notes ready. You might even want to snap a picture of the screens so that you capture all of these questions. When it comes to reflecting on your relationships over the past year, there are two very important questions to ask yourself. And those questions are, number one, which relationships are helping me grow? And the second one, which ones aren't? Now, you want to ask yourself these questions in both your personal relationships and thinking about your work relationships as well. And also any relationships you have maybe beyond that, sometimes even just acquaintances, the relationships you have with acquaintances or people that are in your life. Really important to ask these questions. And, sometimes when you reflect on these questions, the answers can be surprising. You might find answers that you don't want to find, and you might find answers that are surprising to you that maybe are very helpful. So how can you learn from this year's relationships or your relationship choices to be more successful and healthy in the coming year? I suspect that due to the pandemic, this year especially, there's going to be a lot of opportunity for reflection on your relationships, because I think what has happened over the past year is that many of us have experienced our relationships differently than maybe we have in the past. And I want to just give you an example of what I mean here. Some families that my husband and I know have shared with us that when the pandemic started and everything basically got canceled and shut down, what happened? We all were kind of forced to be stuck at home with, I was stuck at home with my husband, and, a lot of people were stuck at home with maybe their spouses, their partners, significant others, their family members. And what some of these folks said to us is that they actually had to learn or relearn how to be around their family and spend time together. Now, believe me, I know that sounds really odd. When I heard it at first, I thought, what are you talking about? Your family, what do you mean you had to relearn? But if you think about it, what happens is we get so caught up in the busyness of life and the hustle and bustle that we don't have the time or take the time to properly connect with each other. So when we had this big pause button due to COVID that got hit, people found themselves having to interact with one another more so than they have before, because we're always so busy, we don't have time for interacting. They started to realize that they didn't have strong connection with each other. And they had to work on connecting and deepening their relationships. So when you reflect on this, I think that the pandemic really opened up a lot of people's eyes to how much they took for granted prior to the pandemic hitting. So the other thing that happens is when you have that opportunity to really focus on your relationships and pay attention, you start to see things. You start to learn things. You have things that become evident to you. And I suspect that for some people, what that means is when you ask this question, however you tried to grow yourself this year, you're going to be able to identify who was helping you in that process, and were there some folks that weren't that helpful, both personal and in the work environment. And as you reflect on that, when you think about these questions, the answers can help you kind of give you a head start on shaping and building out your growth plan. So again, who's helping you grow and who isn't helping you grow? And the final question is, what are you going to do about it? And this can be a tough thing to deal with sometimes. It's interesting when I think about like my own experiences. If I go back to the past several years back, I in a previous relationship with my ex-husband, one of the reasons that he and I split up and got divorced is because he was not supportive of my personal growth. Now, let me be clear, that wasn't the only reason. We had a lot of other issues going on. But what had happened was, just quick story, is that when I graduated from high school, I did not go to college. I actually was enlisted in the United States Air Force. And in between my time that I enlisted and my leave date for basic training, I was in a head-on car accident, head-on crash. And it caused some pretty severe injuries and health issues that then prevented me from being able to go into the military. So after I healed, it was out of high school. I didn't have anything going on. I just went to work. I didn't know that I could go apply at the tech school or do all these things. didn't have a real supportive household. So I didn't go to college. So about 10 years after I graduated, I decided I needed to pursue education. I did not want to go through life always wondering what would have happened if I would have gotten this degree, or if I would have gone to school, would I have had different opportunities? So I started going to tech school, and I was working full time, and I was going to school at night. And my ex-husband was really unsupportive of that. And so that ended up being a big issue for us, and ultimately one of many reasons why we separated. So it was a tough decision to make. It was not easy to come to terms with the fact that my husband at the time did not support my growth. But this is some of the hard decisions we make. Now, let me be very clear here. I'm not suggesting that you go out and divorce your spouse or your partner, or whatever, break up with people. I mean, everyone's relationships are different, but I'm just sharing that as an example of sometimes the tough decisions we have to make. Even in the workplace, I think about, some of the people you work with. Even I would say a real strong area that you need to take a look at is your leadership, who you report to, your managers, your boss, your leaders. How supportive are they of your growth? How supportive is your organization of your growth? If you find that they aren't supportive, that might lead you, as you look at your growth for the upcoming year and beyond, you might make some decisions to potentially leave the organization, or maybe you need to change departments, or even just have a conversation with your manager or leader. It's always important to think about who is supporting you, and if they aren't, why aren't they supporting you? See if you can figure that out. Those are some really big, important reflections that you can do. When you consider responsibilities, learning from how you spent your time and effort this year will help you to better position yourself to make the most of your opportunities and commitments that you set for yourself next year. Now, as you reflect on these areas, here are some questions to include, some more kind of tough questions to work through. Are you doing the right things? We do so many things in a day, right? Are you actually doing the right things? Is your time being spent in the right places? Which responsibilities are truly yours versus things you do out of guilt or fear? And what might happen if you choose to be responsible for those things that only you can do? So a couple things here. First of all, that number one question, are you doing the right things? Just like with relationships, I think 2020 has really positioned everyone very well to truly deeply reflect on this question. Because so many things were essentially removed or paused for us, we were kind of forced into that pause. It really allowed us, I think, in a lot of ways to see what we've been missing and how we fill our days. Again, think about that busyness and that hustle and that bustle. Really encourage you here to lean into what your year looked like this year. Even though a lot of things were canceled and we had to give up a lot of things and miss a lot of things, what opportunities did that open up that you wouldn't have had if those things weren't canceled? I want you to really think into that. And as you answer those questions, as you think about, what are some of those opportunities, then you can identify, as you look ahead to your growth plan, you can identify what you want to start doing, what you want to stop doing, and what you want to continue doing in 2021. I suspect a lot of people are going to, maybe as we come out of this pandemic, maybe slow down a little bit. I think you're going to see some people that are going to cut back on some of the things that they do so that they can spend more quality time with family, especially after looking at the loss of not being able to spend time with family. I mean, if you think about it, we haven't been able to really celebrate Easter, Mother's Day, Father's Day, 4th of July, Thanksgiving. For a lot of us, Christmas isn't going to happen, New Year's. We've essentially lost an entire year of family gatherings in addition to all the other stuff, weddings and funerals and parties and different things. And so I really suspect you're going to find people that are going to, reposition some of their responsibilities. When you think about that second question, which responsibilities are truly yours versus things you do out of guilt or fear? This really helps us to kind of flush out, when we look at that list of responsibilities, which ones do we choose? We all know that we have responsibilities in life that we choose to take on, okay, for all different reasons. You can ask yourself, which of those responsibilities were just kind of dumped in our lap, right? That happens often, probably more at work than it maybe does in our personal life. But there's times when responsibilities are just kind of dumped on us. And so we just take them and do them. But, do you have to truly continue with those things? Which ones do we do out of guilt or fear? I think we all know sometimes we get these responsibilities and we feel like we have to do them because there's some sense of guilt attached to it. Or maybe we have a fear that, well, if it's work, for example, if I don't keep doing this responsibility that was given to me or this task, I might get fired or I might get demoted or I might not get that promotion or I might be viewed adversely. Think about those things. Which ones can or should we give up? If we have this whole list of responsibilities and we just keep doing them and going through the motions, we take away opportunities for us to take on new responsibilities or maybe even to reshape some of our existing responsibilities. So, reflecting on this, having a better understanding and inventory of our responsibilities will help you to prioritize and shape your growth plan for next year. And then when it comes to the returns, okay, here's the questions to ask yourself here. What outcomes did your choices produce? All right, I'm sure all of us had to make some really tough choices this year. Some of us probably lost a lot of choices just because it was ultimately made for us. But what outcomes did your choices produce? Did those outcomes satisfy you? Did they move you forward toward your goals? And if not, what outcome would have been more satisfying and how can you chase that down? The return you get for your choices are going to do one of two things. Okay, they're either going to keep you hungry and willing to move forward. Oftentimes when we have strong returns, it keeps us going, it keeps us in the game, right? Or the other thing that happens is if we don't have those strong returns, it ultimately drains our energy and it keeps us stagnant. So taking some time to think about what returns, what outcomes did you have this year as a result of your experience? Again, just like the other two areas, this is going to help you to be better positioned to figure out what are those things that you want to work on next year. And that takes me into the law of pain. Now, this is a very important and relevant law to apply. And as I went through the 15 laws and tried to figure out which ones I wanted to include in today's presentation, this one really jumped out at me. And I think it's probably for very obvious reasons. Good management of bad experiences leads to great growth. Like I've said a couple of times now, 2020 has brought with it a lot of pain, a lot of discomfort, a lot of discouragement, a lot of negative emotion, feeling, thoughts, experiences for people. And it has been said that every problem introduces a person to him or herself. So there's really so much that we can learn if we're willing to go there. There's so much that we can learn from all of the negative, all of the pain and discomfort that we've experienced in the past year here. So to apply the law of pain, you have to start by assessing your attitude toward negative experiences up until this point of your life. Specifically in the past year, think about how you have responded. What has your attitude been this past year as we have faced all of these things that have come at us in 2020? How have you approached things like failure, tragedy, problems, and challenges that have caused you pain or discomfort? It's important to reflect on this, and everyone should be able to do it because everyone has what's called a pain file. We all have these things called pain files. In other words, it's really a compilation of the painful or uncomfortable experiences that we have endured. And each of those entries that we have, from the time we're born until current day, we have all these experiences filed away in our pain file that we've endured. When you think about all of those experiences, particularly the ones from this last year, every one of them has a response attached to it. In other words, how did we respond to that event or that experience? A lot of people take the coulda, woulda, shoulda approach when it comes to dealing with our pain points. So let me share with you some examples of what I mean by coulda, woulda, shoulda. The pain of loss. Obviously, this year there has been a tremendous amount of loss in varying degrees. All right. Some people lost a sports season. Some people lost the graduation ceremony. Some people maybe lost their weddings, or some people lost family members. Some people lost gifts. I mean, there's so many different things. Some people lost jobs. I mean, I could go on and on. Everyone has experienced loss this year in different ways. And a lot of times how people respond to that is, if I could only get that back, if I could only get back to the way things were, if I could only, if I could. The pain of not being number one is another example, or maybe not achieving what you wanted. I would be at the top if it wasn't for this. I would be doing really well in business if it wasn't for COVID. I would have 10 customers. I would have this. I would have, if it wasn't for. The pain of incompetence. I should have known better. I should have seen that coming. I should have made a different choice. I should have done something different. Or the pain of change. Again, these are only a few of the many examples of the pain files we have. And this one sounds like, what are they doing? They should have listened to me. They should have done this differently. They should have taken my ideas. With any of these approaches, if you get caught up or hung up in the coulda, woulda, shoulda, because some people, this is what they do. They just get stuck here. They kind of sit in the woefulness of, I could have done this. I woulda, shoulda, coulda. When you sit in that response, it stifles you from growth. All right. It keeps you're not moving forward. When you're sitting in that cycle of just coulda, woulda, shoulda, you're not moving forward. You're not growing. It stifles you. And it just isn't going to help change anything, because it's not going to just change on its own. You have to make the choice to move forward from that. So a lot of times for people, this is a huge mindset shift, but what it means is that you let your pain and your discomfort, instead of letting it hold you back, you let it become a catalyst for your development. And what you have to understand is that growth, when it comes to any kind of a negative experience, growth is the best possible outcome that we can have for any negative experience. So think about your pain files. Reflect on that as you start building out your growth plan for the next year. Think about, what were some of those pain points that you felt, and how did you respond to that? Did you wallow in the coulda, woulda, shoulda? Are you still wallowing in the coulda, woulda, shoulda? Or are you looking at, how can I make this a catalyst for growth? How can I move forward this and learn and grow from it? So when it comes to applying the law of pain, again, I kind of touched on these already, but just, some of those very specific questions. How do you specifically deal with pain? Do you avoid it at all costs or endure it because you have to? Or do you embrace the pain and find ways to stay positive? And ultimately, what it comes down to when you think about your pain and your response and how you kind of go through that, you have the choice. You can either become bitter or better, right? And the choice is yours. You ultimately have that choice. So as you look ahead to growth in 2021, I want to encourage you to focus on how you can turn this year's pain into gain. Because no matter what you have gone through, or no matter what you're currently going through, you have the opportunity to grow from it. And I know that probably sounds hard, and it is, right? But even some of the worst pain imaginable has growth woven into it. It's there. It's sometimes and often difficult to see the opportunity in the midst of your pain, but it's there. So to become better, not bitter, to become better, you must be willing to not only look for it, you have to look for ways to get better, look for ways to grow, but you have to also pursue it. All right, so in our first 2 learning objectives, you were given some key reflection points and questions that will prepare you for the next learning objective we're going to cover, which is building out your 2021 growth plan. Now, as I said before, I absolutely do not recommend working on your growth plan until you have taken that quality time to reflect. And I've given you a lot of questions and a lot of key thought points to work through to help you to do that reflection and to help you prepare. After you've done that, The steps and phases in the process of building out your growth plan are discover, develop, expand, and master. So the first step, when you get to this point, you've done your reflection, the first step to building out your growth plan is to discover the areas in your life that you need to grow in. Now, you might want to break this up into two different categories, your personal growth and your professional growth, because both areas will be coming with opportunities. You should be able to find opportunities for growth in both of those sectors. And here's the thing, if you spend that quality time reflecting, this is why I'm driving that point home so much. If you spend that quality time reflecting on your relationships, your responsibilities, and your returns, the three things that I talked about earlier, it should be relatively easy to identify what your growth areas are. And once you've identified your growth areas, the next step in the discovery phase is to prioritize which ones that you want to pursue in 2021. Now, it's likely that you'll have several things on your list. Most people, I think, do that are serious about growth and really want to move forward. But once you get that list, what I recommend is that you choose maybe just one or two to work on. And you're going to want to choose growth areas that you will be able to commit to working on. Because remember, the goal here is to move forward, not to stay in the same place or move backward. And sometimes, just like anything, if we take on way too much at once, right? Like what's the saying, you have to eat an elephant one bite at a time, because if you try to eat the whole thing at once, it's never going to happen. It's never going to work. It's the same thing here when it comes to your growth. If you have this expansive list of things that you want to grow in, pick and choose, prioritize that list and pick and choose the ones that you feel are going to be the most helpful to not only you in 2021, but to the people around you. It's really important to think about that, because again, if you take on too many, chances are you're going to get overwhelmed, or you're going to maybe experience perhaps some failure, or you're going to not move as fast as you want to. And a lot of times I think what people do is we just trash all of it then and say, forget it. Pick one or two and pick the ones that you really truly can commit to. Once you land on the growth areas that you choose to commit to, you can then move on to step 2, which is develop. So in this phase, what you're going to do is fill in your growth plan with specific goals and action items. You will also identify the resources that you will need for your growth areas. So, for example, is it going to be maybe you need some books, or maybe you want to sign up for a couple of classes or seminars or webinars, or get a coach or take on a mentor, whatever that looks like for you. You have to identify what are those resources that you want to incorporate into your growth plan. Metaphorically, I like to speak metaphorically and kind of give people images to think through when it comes to some of these things. This step is really like planting a seed. So you identify what it is you want to grow in this step. You then procure the supplies that you need, right? So when you plant a garden or you plant flowers, you put your seeds in, and you know that you need to have the right kind of soil, the right environment. You create that environment required to plant and cultivate that which you are seeking to grow. So that's really what this phase is about. When you identify that growth item that you want to essentially plant, or that you want to grow, this is where you do all the work to kind of start setting that up and creating that environment. Now, I want to share with you a personal example of where I'm at as I'm developing my 2021 plan. In this phase, one of the areas that I am choosing to grow in, that I feel like I need to grow in, is forgiveness. This is in my personal life, forgiveness. And the reason I'm choosing that is because I have some painful experiences from my childhood and past that I need to let go of in order to move forward. And for me to do that, I have to embrace forgiveness in a way that I have never done before. And I have to deepen my understanding of forgiveness. And more importantly, I have to practice forgiveness in ways that I haven't before. Now, I just want to clarify something here. This doesn't mean that I am not a forgiving person and that I've never forgiven people in my life. So please don't think that way. What it means, though, is that in order for me to move forward from the things of my past, I have to take forgiveness to another level. I have to grow into that next level of forgiveness, or that bigger level or higher level, whatever you want to call it, of forgiveness. And so some of the things that I've done as I've been in this development phase of this is a couple weeks ago, I ordered a book specifically on forgiveness. And I'm also reaching out to people who I know that have extended forgiveness after enduring some incredibly painful experiences in their lives, so that I can learn from those experiences. So, that's what this step looks like, whether it's a personal growth item that you're working on, or even in the workplace, a professional item. That's really how this step works and what you do. So just kind of to summarize, in this phase, we learn, we ask for help, we step into discomfort. How many people love that? We begin working on those action items that we set for ourselves, and we really start to incorporate change. Now, once you spend a reasonable amount of time learning and practicing in the development phase, you're likely going to spend a fair amount of time in that phase. You then can move on to the expand phase. So in this phase, basically what's happening is that seed that you planted, it has sprouted, it has grown, and now it's time for us to sort of transplant that to a larger area so that you can grow even more. This step here is really about pushing yourself further, leaning into even more discomfort, taking the growth you've accomplished thus far to the next level. It's seeking out more advanced resources, methods, and practices. Now, I want to note that there is no time frame. Sometimes people will ask me, well, Angie, how much time should I spend? Is it like a year? Is it a month? Is it a couple weeks? How much time should I spend in each of these steps or each of these phases? And the answer is there really is no specific timeline or time frame that you will follow for each of these steps. What I tell people is that they should take as long as they need to take. You might not get through all of these steps in 1 year. If it's a growth item you have for next year, it might take you a couple years to reach it. Depending on what growth areas you choose to work on, the process, it could go very quickly, or it could take a long time. And more importantly, what it's really going to depend on is your level of effort and commitment, how much time you're willing to put into it. Let's check my time here. All right, the final phase in the process is the master phase. So metaphorically, this is where you have taken that one seed that you started with and you have grown it now into an entire field of plants. You've grown and learned in leaps and bounds. You're well equipped in the area that you resolve to grow in. You're knowledgeable. It's maybe even part of your daily practice because you've worked on it in the previous steps. One thing I do want to mention here, it's really important to note that this master phase is a very difficult step to reach because ultimately it requires an enormous amount of commitment, dedication, effort, energy, and practice. I mean, all the steps require that, but this is really, to get to the master phase is like the long haul, right? You really have to stick to it. And honestly, I would say that a small percent of people really actually get to the master stage or the master step. But listen, I'm not telling you that because I want to discourage you. I know that you're probably thinking, okay, well, sounds a little discouraging. I'm telling you that because I want to encourage you. This is where the importance of our growth plan ultimately comes from. Imagine the outcomes. I mean, you're going to do some reflecting this year. Those of you that are going to pursue and take what I'm sharing with you today and build out your plan, you're going to reflect on 2020, which had a lot of negativity attached to it, but you have some enormous opportunities for reflection. Now think about what it's going to look like in December of 2021 when you start reflecting on how 2021 went. Just imagine that. What is it going to look like when you maybe, if you've achieved those growth areas and you've seen and you reflect on the outcomes and the returns that you've gotten? I'm hoping that if you set up this plan for yourself, you're going to be able to achieve those things. Just imagine what that's going to feel like at the end of December next year when you have that opportunity. So the whole idea here is just, make a plan and stick to it. Make a plan and stick to it. And so the last objective, the last learning objective that I want to touch on as we've talked through all of these other things is the law of the rubber band. And I've talked a lot about discomfort. I've used that word many times today, right? Discomfort within the process of building out your 2021 growth plan. And the law of the rubber band is important to keep in mind here and to apply. And what it says is that growth stops when you lose the tension between where you are and where you could be, right? Think of a rubber band, where you are and where you could be. If you have a rubber band, all of us, I'm sure, have had a rubber band, and when it's not being stretched, it's just kind of small and goes into itself. But when you start stretching that rubber band, you need to stretch it in order to get it from one end to the other, all right? One of the best pieces of advice that I ever received, it came about 10 years ago, and it was before I facilitated my very first class. I believe it was in 2011. And I was going to facilitate my very first class. I wasn't always a facilitator. And I was incredibly nervous. And I remember one of my colleagues said to me, he said two things to me. He said, Angie, the reason you're nervous, he said, it's okay to be nervous. The reason you're nervous is because you just really want to do a good job and you really want to serve the people that are in the classroom, which was absolutely true. And he said, here's the other thing. You're nervous and you're uncomfortable because this isn't an uncomfortable experience for you, because you're going to be up in front of a bunch of people and you're talking and whatever. He said, you need to learn how to get comfortable being uncomfortable. Get comfortable being uncomfortable. I have carried that with me ever since he said that to me. And I can't tell you how impactful that has been. I mean, you want to talk about growth. That has been a huge area of growth for me, to get comfortable being uncomfortable, to not run away from those uncomfortable situations, to intentionally put myself in situations that are uncomfortable. And here's why this is so important when you think about your growth plan and why discomfort has to be a part of it. Because if you're comfortable, you are not growing. End of story. If you're comfortable, you're complacent, there's no growth happening. Stepping into uncomfortable situations or stepping into discomfort is a step toward growth. And the thing is, I guess it's not surprising, but few people ever really want to be stretched. There are a lot of people that just get comfortable, they fall into the status quo, they get comfortable, and this is what I want to be, this is where I want to be. But here's the problem with that. And I want to make sure that you don't miss this. The problem with that is that when change or pain comes, if you're constantly comfortable and you're never expecting it and you're never doing things to practice change and to practice even dealing with pain, it catches you completely off guard when it comes. And what happens is it makes it incredibly difficult, if not impossible, to navigate through that change or to navigate through that pain. And the thing is, we all know that change is inevitable. I mean, just look at 2020. How many of us were completely caught off guard when COVID changed and shut down everything? I would say the majority of us were totally caught off guard. And as we look ahead, I mean, we've been in this since what, March, I think is when it ultimately started. So we've been going at this now for 10 months. Many people have not recovered and won't for some time. And some people will never recover from all of the things that have happened in 2020. So the whole idea with the law of the rubber band and making sure that we are constantly, trying to keep that tension going, constantly stretching ourselves, is because it helps us to be ready for change. It puts us in a better position when change and pain comes. I'm not saying change isn't going to be painful. I'm not saying that pain isn't going to hurt. It absolutely is. But when we get in that habit, when we get in that practice of stretching ourselves and following and applying the law of the rubber band, it can help us work through that at a faster rate or a little bit easier than if we are just sitting in status quo. So how can you apply the law of the rubber band? Ask yourself some questions. In what areas of your life, this one is important, in what areas of your life have you lost your stretch and settled in? I'm sure we all have those areas where we've lost our stretch. In other words, where are you comfortable or stuck in that status quo? Some more questions. Where are you falling short of your potential? What goals haven't you hit that you know you're capable of hitting? The next one, what habits have you developed that are hindering you from moving forward? We all have habits that hinder us, and oftentimes we don't realize it. So, pay attention to some of your habits. What areas of past success have you stopped winning in or have you given up on? Whatever your answers are to these questions, you need to find internal reasons to seek the tension to stretch again. Find your stretch. And if you can't find it in past areas, then find new growth areas that you can stretch into. So as we wrap up, I'm going to end with the same quote that we started out with a little while ago. The only guarantee that tomorrow or that next year, that 2021 is going to be greater than today is that you're growing right now. So in our bite-sized learning session, I've given you all 4 learning objectives that are also action items that you can use to start building out your 2021 growth plan even today, after we finish up in just a few minutes. Again, start with that year-end review by reflecting on those 3 areas, your relationships, your responsibilities, and your returns. Then apply the law of pain. Seek out the growth that lies within all of the pain and discomfort that you endured this past year. Then start officially building out your 2021 plan. Start with that discovery phase. Figure out what it is you want to plant, and then move on to the developing phase. What do you need to make sure that that seed grows into what you want it to grow into? Where do you want to grow into? And what do you need to get there? And then finally, always embrace that law of the rubber band. Get comfortable being uncomfortable. All right, so that is the 15 laws of growth. Looks like I've got about 8 minutes left. So I'll go ahead and take the PowerPoint down and stop sharing and open it up if anyone has any questions, thoughts, comments. Certainly open it up to that at this time.
I'm looking to see if there's any questions at this moment. There are not, but you talked, this is 15 invaluable laws of growth. I know you touched on some of them. Where if somebody wants more information about, how to advance, using these laws, what should they do? Where could they go?
Sure. Yeah. Thanks a lot, John. Yeah. So as I mentioned at the beginning, there are a variety of ways that we can work through this. I work with some groups that, you might have like a mastermind group, which is kind of like a peer coaching study group. If someone is interested in just one-on-one coaching and they want to just work through their personal growth plan individually, sometimes people prefer that method. Or if there's even a group or an organization out there that wants to have like a workshop on this, we can do that. I would say you can just contact me. Let's see, maybe I should put the PowerPoint back up with my contact information again. You can visit my website, stepintohumility.com, and I have, let's see, get that up there. There we go. All my contact information is up on the screen. Yeah, you can visit my website. It has all of the programs that I offer. All my contact information is out there. My phone number is on the website. So feel free to reach out in any of those ways. Like I said, even at the beginning too, if you have any questions just on today's presentation, feel free to reach out. I love answering people's questions and talking about the different things that the different subjects and topics that we have talked about. So all of those are an option.
Okay, those are great glasses. I was going to wear those this morning, so I'm so glad I did.
Yeah, I figured I would get a little festive today. We're only a couple weeks from Christmas, so this is my version of the ugly sweater party.
Perfect. Well, I think that that looks like that might be the end of questions. So if anybody does have a question, now's the time to do that. So while we have you, we're a couple things. One, we're doing 2 more of these sessions, but also we're talking about a Live to Lead series with you. Could you, if you have a couple of minutes, could you tell the folks who are on the webcast with us what that's all about?
Sure, yeah, absolutely. So we have a really unique opportunity. I have a unique opportunity with the Chamber of Commerce to set up a fundraising event around Live to Lead. So real quickly, Live to Lead is it's a premier leadership conference that took place back in October. It's usually held live in Atlanta, Georgia, and it's hosted by John Maxwell, and then he invites usually 3 or 4 other speakers to join him on the stage and speak on the subject of leadership. So it happened live in October, and there are 4 replay dates because of COVID. We had to switch to a virtual platform if you didn't live in Georgia. And so we have a unique opportunity with 4 replay sessions. And so the Chamber is partnering with me to do it as a fundraiser. So the Chamber of Commerce will be getting 50% of the ticket price, which is $59 per ticket. With that ticket, people will have access for 5 days to the 2020 speakers that just happened back in October. You also, with your admission ticket, get access to over 2.5 hours of bonus content, which includes last year's speakers, a lot of really awesome content involved there. So it's a really great opportunity. What I love about being able to offer this as a fundraiser is not only does it help benefit the Chamber, like I said, 50% of the price goes back to the Chamber, which I think is pretty high based on most fundraisers that I've seen. So it's a way for us to help out the Chamber of Commerce, but it's also a unique opportunity to invest in your own personal growth and development. We're talking about the growth plans for 2020. It's a great way to start. We're going to do the replay on January 15th. Like I said, people will have 5 days after that to watch. But I also like it because I know a lot of companies this time of year like to do things like Christmas parties, or they like to bring in speakers and do different things. Obviously, with COVID, a lot of that stuff is just not going to happen this year. And so it also gives companies an opportunity to, provide some motivational speakers and encouragement for their team members, in January. So, nice way to kick off the new year and, like I said, help out the Chamber of Commerce. So really excited about that.
Great. Well, be looking for more of that information coming out within the week. So all good stuff. Again, Angela, great job on this program. The next series or next session of this series is on January 13th, again at 8 o'clock, talking about becoming a person of influence and how to positively impact the lives of others. So that should be very good. And then on the 17th of February, we're having Today Matters, daily practices to guarantee tomorrow's success. So be looking for those, tune into those when those come out. Again, Angela, appreciate the program. This has been recorded. It'll be posted on our website, and we'll be getting it out to others. So, and if you want to relive it again, you can go back and view this program. So again, Angela, for participating and presenting this program, and we will see you all again. I guess it'll be next year.
Yeah.
So thank you for joining us.
Thanks a lot, everybody. Have a great Christmas.